Yeah, we had a private conversation, but he said we're going to do the right thing, and you have my support, all of our support, logistically and otherwise. So before he made those statements publicly, I had a private conversation with him around 4:30 West Coast time, and he said everything that I could have hoped for. And we had a very long conversation, and every single thing he said, they followed through on. So I'm just not interested in finding daylight on those statements, because every single thing his administration, and it starts at the top, including the vice president, has been consistent with the expectation that we repatriate these passengers, and we do it in a way that does justice to the spirit that defines the best of our country and the state of California.
I spoke to the president this morning again. He is ready, willing, and able to help. I've been speaking with members of his staff late last night, early this morning. We need their help, especially on the hospital capacity issue. We need FEMA. FEMA has tremendous resources. When I was at HUD, I worked with FEMA. I know what they can do. I know what the Army Corps of Engineers can do. They have a capacity that we simply do not have. I said to the president, who is a New Yorker, who I've known for many, many years, I put my hand out in partnership. I want to work together 100%. I need your help. I want your help. And New Yorkers will do everything they can to be good partners with the federal government. I think the president was 100% sincere in saying that he wanted to work together in partnership, in a spirit of cooperation. He has taken evidence that his team has been on it. I know a team when they're on it, and I know a team when they're not on it. His team is on it. They've been responsive late at night, early in the morning, and they've thus far been doing everything that they can do. And I want to say thank you, and I want to say that I appreciate it. And they will have nothing but cooperation and partnership from the state of New York. And we're not Democrats and we're not Republicans. We are Americans at the end of the day. That's who we are. And that's who we are when we are at our best.
This was remarkable from the President of the United States. This is a nonpartisan. This is an important thing to note and to applaud from an American standpoint, from a human standpoint. He is being the kind of leader that people need, at least in tone, today and yesterday, in tone that people need and want and yearn for in times of crisis and uncertainty. So we've been talking about a lot of the specifics that they brought up today, whether it's construction companies asking them to give masks to hospitals, the fact that they are thinking about $1,000, perhaps the Andrew Yang idea, to people, but big picture.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Hey everyone, welcome to NeoUnrealist. I can understand how you might be feeling right now. I mean, what you just saw was an anomaly. Maybe now you're looking around to see if Morpheus is about to sling one of his red pills at you. I mean, clearly there is a glitch in the Matrix. Can anyone get me the weather report for hell? I mean, I've got to see that because there's a distinct possibility it may have frozen over. The governors of the two largest Democrat-run states in the Union, two men who really have no reason politically to moderate their tone to appeal to independent and centrist voters, to win re-election, because their states, New York and California, are so overwhelmingly one-party dominated. There's no reason for them to look centrist. Those two governors, as well as CNN political correspondent Dana Bash, or is it Dana Bash? I believe it's just Dana. They all gave President Trump unsolicited praise for his actions to deal with the Wuhan virus pandemic in the last few days. Andrew Cuomo, who just a few days ago was in a testy Twitter flare-up with the president, didn't just praise President Trump in front of, a neutral press conference audience, where one would expect most politicians, being watched by the general public, to take a statesman-like tone and demeanor. No. He stood his ground later on in the evening in, of all places, Rachel Maddow's show on the notorious 24/7 Trump-bashing MSNBC.
And on that regard, I've been talking to President Trump. We're working in partnership, and he has activated the federal government. We're looking at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to come in and help us build and construct, FEMA to help us come in with emergency supplies. But that's the third strategy, if you will, build new beds in 45 days, if that's even possible.
Watch how Cuomo even pushes back when Maddow went fishing for, a negative comment on Trump from the governor when, he wouldn't give her the Trump-bashing answer she wanted from him the first time she asked him a question.
And, Governor, just to be clear, in terms of your partnership, as you described it with President Trump, there's obviously been friction there. There always is, even in normal political times, between state and federal leaders at times like this. Do you feel that you're working constructively with the federal government now, with that kind of urgent planning process that you're talking about right now for getting those things built in a matter of weeks? Do you feel like you and the federal government are rowing in the same direction?
I think it's fair to say, Rachel, that my relationship with the president went beyond mere state-federal institutional frictions. We've had significant differences. There is no doubt about that. And I have for many years, and I've been very outspoken about it, as has he. But I had a very good conversation with the president where I said, look, forget Democrat, Republican. We're Americans, and we're talking about life and death. And we're going to have a tragedy in this state. We have the highest number of cases in the United States. We're going to have a real tragedy where people die because they couldn't get the right health care. And I need the help of the federal government. I need that partnership. I'm a former cabinet secretary in the Clinton administration. I was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I did disasters all across the country. I know the potential of the federal government, and we need it here. And I said, I put out my hand in partnership. I want to work with you. I'll be a good partner. I need your help. Let's do what we were elected to do. Let's fulfill our constitutional duty. And the president said yes. I believe he's sincere. More than just belief, he has acted on it, Rachel. I spoke to the Secretary of Defense today. I got a call from the White House team late last night, early this morning. I have the Army Corps of Engineers coming in here tomorrow. So I believe he's doing what he has to do, and I respect him for it. I respect him for it.
Governor.
I respect him for it. Words I bet you would never hear uttered by a prominent Democrat politician in office on an MSNBC flagship primetime opinion show under sustained questioning from an increasingly frantic Rachel Russia Maddow, fishing for that money, Trump-bashing sound clip. Guys, I've been doing Wuhan virus videos since, starting all the way back in January. January 26th, I think it is, when I checked. This is probably my 20th video on this topic in that time. I know most of you watching, if you didn't believe me before, when I told you that this was coming, you sure as hell believe me now that a lot of you are stuck in your houses with nowhere to go. Those of you who can, you're working from home. I mean, those of you who can't, you might even be sitting at home right now wondering if you even have a job on the other side of this. Especially if you work at a restaurant or some other service industry, depending on tips, or if you work in an industry where you work on commission. Maybe you're a small business owner and you're losing your shirt right now because your state or city has ordered all non-essential businesses closed. Anyway, the point is, there is still a slice of my audience. I see you guys in the comments, both on YouTube and on BitChute. You're on my timeline on Twitter. You're on Facebook. Some of you are still having a hard time believing this isn't some kind of hoax by forces hostile to President Trump. Do you think Gavin, Newsom, and Andrew Cuomo suddenly got cured of Trump derangement syndrome? I mean, these people have spent 4 years now calling our president a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a bully, an agent of Russia, a criminal, a traitor to his country, basically. Right now, they could be burying, forget a knife, an axe in his back. It's the easiest thing to do to bash a president in the middle of a health crisis like this. It's in their interest politically to always bash Trump for all things all the time. What you saw there, people, was fear. Note the language Cuomo used to describe the conversation he had in his role as governor of New York State with the president of the United States. People are going to die. Look, I don't care what you think about Trump or Cuomo, whether you're for Trump, against Cuomo, or whether you're for Cuomo or against Trump. Any conversation you have where both parties agree that the outcome of their conversation, is basically about how to minimize the loss of life to hundreds, if not thousands of people. In terms of who is expected to die in the near term, in this pandemic, I would hope that the conversation they had went exactly as the governor described it. I would have been terribly disappointed in Trump if, when called directly, man to man, by Cuomo, even after some heated words between them earlier in the week, if he'd responded or reacted badly to that. And by the same token, I'd have been very disappointed with Cuomo had he let pride and partisanship prevent him from, making that phone call and meeting Trump halfway by putting it to him that, the stuff between them, that would have to be pushed aside for the time being in order for them both to do their jobs when both of them know that people are going to start dying in bunches soon. Now, I think another reason that Newsom and Cuomo, they're going out of their way to give Trump credit publicly is that it's well known by now. Look, let's be honest. Trump, as helpful as he can be when it comes to this sort of thing, he's usually there when things need to be done on an emergency basis. He will bristle if he feels he's not getting acknowledgement or credit for doing the thing. It's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm not in any of these people's inner circles, but I've got to believe, given how much California and New York really need the help of the president right now, both Newsom and Cuomo, both of them and their staffs are probably consciously making every effort to make sure that Trump does not feel in any way slighted. In Trump's eyes, not mentioning his role in a major action like this could be perceived on his end as a slight. So that's why both men, for the sake of their states, seem to be speaking in positive terms about the president in front of audiences, mainly the audience mainly being the media, because that's what we're talking about mainly here. That a media that's just hungering for anything to hang on the president. And any daylight that they could spot between these elected officials, these governors, and the president. Remember, the media's goal here, at least for some of them, is to get the president not help the situation. Newsom all but admits it in this article that the emergency is of such a degree, such a nature, he can't indulge in the political game right now. In this article where they're asking why he's saying such nice things about Trump, he says, I am working to solve problems, not create problems. I'm willing to put aside our differences on a lot of issues to meet this moment so I can meet the needs of the people of the state of California. That's about as open and overt an admission as you're likely to ever get from a politician. He needs Trump and cannot afford to create a problem by getting into a partisan food fight that the state of California would pay for and more dead people than might happen otherwise. There are 50 states in this country and who knows how many territories. And all the people that run those states and territories, all of them now have Wuhan virus infections. Some of them, they're going to get it really bad. New York and California among them. So there's going to be a lot of governors lining up to ask the president for a lot of things, a lot of big things. So you better believe that all these governors, whether they're Republican or Democrat, They're going to be trying to forge a personal working relationship with the president so they can be at the point where they can call him up and get him on the phone directly and not have to go through multiple layers of staff, which is what would happen naturally if relations broke down between them. Human nature being what it is, and common sense tell you, in a time of crisis, you as a decision maker, you want the ability to communicate directly with the other decision maker with whom your fate is intertwined. So you don't want those middlemen to get between you, which is what would likely happen if politics were to be involved in the situation. But even the non-politician, Dana Bash, found herself under attack from the left for saying nice things about Trump's performance. Dana Bash doesn't have lives in her hands, or at least she's not directly responsible for them in the larger sense. She answered her critics by saying, look, the tone set by the President Trump at his press conferences the past couple days was remarkably different and welcomed by most people. She stated that as a fact. One would hope that, yes, someone on the air in the news business, she's not really an opinion person. She's a political correspondent, that she'd be able to state facts without getting her head bitten off, but there it is. Now, if you watch my videos regularly, you'll recall last week, I think it was last week, maybe it was the week before, when I said that what President Trump had to do was stop all the happy talk and just tell the American people that things were going to get bad. Not paint doom and gloom, things are hopeless, not throw his hands up in the air and scream that we're all going to die. Just to say, look, get ready, America. We're going to be asking everyone to make some sacrifices in the weeks ahead that will likely be very painful, for some of us more than others. I think the American people respond better to a crisis when they're told up front bad times are coming, because then at least it's expected. Panic happens when people encounter the unknown. If all they hear is that Wuhan coronavirus is just a flu, well, of course they're going to wonder what all this fuss is about, why they're being told they have to stay home, why businesses are shutting down, why the schools are closed. You can't just spring that on people. It's hard enough when they have advance notice. Trump yesterday, he told reporters the following: that American life will be upended for the next 5 months, perhaps, and that the country could be headed for a recession. We have an invisible enemy, he said. This is a very bad one. This is bad in the sense that it's so contagious. And then Trump followed it up by giving concrete steps that he was asking of every American in a 2-page handout, telling us what the federal government wanted from each of us for the next 15 days. The staying home where possible, the no gatherings of more than 10 persons, etc. That was perfect. No one can claim that they weren't informed or that the next 2 weeks are coming as some kind of surprise. And he also prepared us that, look, things could be abnormal for maybe even 5 months from now into August. He also said that there is the potential for a Wuhan coronavirus created recession. And that's pretty much almost a certainty at this point. I mean, how could it not be? The economic activity of just about the whole world has more or less ground to a halt. Many of the people especially in the developed countries, are pretty much staying at home. Schools are closed, and most businesses, if they're not closed, they're running on skeleton crews, or most of their workforce is working from home. Now, what's responsible for Trump's new tone? What really caused this shift? And believe it or not, I think the person that may be most responsible for that is Fox News' Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker, he's probably been the guy, at least on the cable news side. I don't watch much of the network news, but he's been the guy that's really been on top of this since way back, since when I started making videos. You had even guys like Mike Cernovich. He was one of the early people. And certainly on YouTube, you had Medicare and Stick Sexenhammer. Among other people, I'm sure I'm forgetting. But such is the regard that, President Trump held for Tucker Carlson. Look, the bottom line is, Tucker, what appears to have happened, he drove personally, himself, to Mar-a-Lago on a Saturday, and he met with President Trump for 2 hours. Tucker Carlson had never been to Mar-a-Lago before. I don't think he ever wanted to go. I don't think that's his scene. And it's the first time he asked the president's staff for a one-on-one time with the president for a private discussion. This wasn't for an interview or anything. As a matter of fact, he claims he wanted to keep it secret. Somehow it leaked to the press. Who knows who leaked it? Whether it was someone in his team or staff or someone from the White House. But anyway, such is the regard that I mentioned that President Trump holds, the Fox host, that he agreed to see him. And especially during this challenging time, I mean, you got to imagine the demands on the president's time, even on a weekend. And it looks like Trump listened to what he had to say. I mean, there is precedent for this. There's every indication that during the recent tension between the United States and Iran, if you remember not so long ago when the Iranian-backed militias attacked the United States Embassy in Baghdad, it was a time when after the United States had retaliated for that attack by launching a drone strike on the general of the Iranian Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani, it looked very likely that we were probably going to war with Iran. Apparently it was watching Tucker Carlson, his show, that helped play a role in convincing President Trump to not escalate further when Iran responded to the U.S. Retaliation with an ineffective missile attack on U.S. facilities in Iraq. Because no lives were lost, there were injuries, of course. I believe a certain number of our troops did suffer from traumatic brain injuries, but the attack, in comparison was so minor, it was perceived as, by much of the world, as Iran blinking and signaling that they didn't want to go to war over Soleimani. So President Trump decided that it would not be worth the loss of life on both sides, and that he could take the big win of having erased the biggest chess piece in terms of Iranian personnel that Iran had, wiped him off the map in the person of Qasem Soleimani. We've been after him for years. He more or less just followed Tucker's advice of, look, we got our scalp for the attack on the embassy. He was the guy most directly responsible, in command of the overall effort, and the Iranians, they're humiliated in the eyes of the world, so let's just walk away. It would appear that Tucker Carlson's intervention was more direct this time. It wasn't from watching him on his show necessarily. And for whatever reason, he, more than maybe any other personality in the media, seems able to get through that globalist bubble that's formed around the president. Because for a few days there, it seemed like the people in Trump's inner circle, they were feeding him the Democrat hoax line that he was putting out there. Look, it's true that the Democrats were and are politicizing the Wuhan coronavirus. The problem is that a president in a crisis, he needs to stay above that and leave the political infighting to his campaign staff and his lower-level surrogates like senators and congressmen. People like Ted Cruz and Matt Gaetz are more than capable of running rings around the amateurish Democrats who know less about the Wuhan coronavirus than you do. These people are actually wasting time about what to call the virus, if you could believe this. I mean, someone forgot to tell them that ship sailed a long time ago. The general public knows this as the Chinese virus or the Wuhan coronavirus. Regular people are not going to walk around using the name severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus-2 to talk about the Wuhan flu any more than they're likely to say amyotrophic lateral sclerosis when they're talking about Lou Gehrig's disease. It's ridiculous. That's all for this NeoUnrealist. If you want to help the channel, do me a favor. Hit like for this video. Leave a comment below or mash down on the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber of the channel. Click on the notification bell beside it. You got to put it on the all setting to keep up with newer content, and you've got to make sure that your YouTube settings are set up to allow notifications to be sent to you. Now, if you want to contribute directly to the channel, toss your hard-earned dollars into the tip jar. You can follow the links below in the description to Patreon, Subscribestar, or PayPal. Or if you watch this on BitChute, it's as easy as just clicking on the green tip pledge button on the video player. But most importantly, thanks for watching.
Curfew, I don't like the word curfew. Dad tried to have a curfew for me. I never got past the resentment. But
I do believe you'll see
the least
more
of your
tightening
problems,
if
by
the
the way.
numbers don't slow.
Your problems with the curfew. It's the least of your
Well,
problems, just so you know.
I never you violated the curfew all the time, caused much pain, but that's a different story.